Radio Raheem here on Radio Row with Teddy Atlas. You know, one of the most sought after guys for analysis on big fights like this. Not only have you made yourself a legend in the corner, but now outside the ring, people really like to know what you think about the matchups technically. Obviously, you saw the first fight. What was your call on the first fight?
I thought, as a lot of people thought, I thought that Pacquiao won that fight. I didn't think Bradley got it, but as I've thought many times, as I've witnessed many times, as I've complained and yelled about many times in my career, the judges did it wrong. You know, whether you want to call it incompetence or whether you want to call it corruption, take your pick. I don't know any one area in anything where you can be that incompetent that many times, where at some point you have to say, well, maybe it's not incompetence, maybe it's corruption. But I thought that as many times as I yell about and I rail against on ESPN Friday Night Fights, that the judges did a disservice to the fans and, more importantly, to the fighters in the ring. The fighters did their best, but the judges didn't.
What is the correct criteria for judging a championship fight?
Well, it's supposed to be, it's professional boxing, not amateur boxing. So, difference. You know, amateur boxing, who lands the most punches, you know, and it doesn't matter if it's a hard punch or less impactful punch. But in professional boxing, you want to bring fans in. So that's attached to it. The element of showmanship, the element of business, selling the sport, making it entertaining. So the rules, the criterion, supposed to be who lands the most effective punches. The hardest, most telling, most hurtful, but most effective punches. And quite often, I think if you ask the judge, he wouldn't even know what the criterion is, because it becomes blurry. I mean, it becomes too subjective, where one judge says, oh, well, I like this style. I like, you know, a guy that moves around and stays on the outside and controls space. Another one says, I like a guy who's aggressive, whether he's landing or not. Again, that should be taken out of the sport. There's people's lives, people's careers, you know, at stake here with the judgment of these fighters. I mean, they're risking their health to get to a place, quite honestly, it's no secret, where they can make money and they can get out of the sport, where they can take care of their families, they can realize their goals and their dreams. And these judges, when they get it wrong, they don't know the criterion, and they're subjective about it. They're putting these fighters at more risk than they should be. You know, if a referee, if an umpire gets it wrong in baseball, that's bad, but these guys have guaranteed contracts and they're going to be playing again tomorrow. But if they get it wrong in boxing, that fighter who worked his way to that place, well, he took thousands of punches potentially to get to that place. He goes back in the line now to get back to that place where he was close to getting to the door, to getting out, to making the impact money that he's trying to make for his family to get out. You're relegating the fighter to more danger by either your incompetence or your corruption with the decision you make. So the judges, I say it and I say it all the time, get it right. Get the right judges in there. Get an oversight panel to look at these judges and don't allow them to get it wrong.
Now, you're one of the guys that we always know we can get straight talk from, and you've been around long enough to know the answer to this question. Where's the corruption coming from? When it's not incompetence, when it is corruption, what's the source of that?
There's no separation of city and state. There's no separation of the so-called administrators of this sport and the people making money at it. You can't blend those two together and expect not to have corruption. Human beings will be human beings. You know, they will find the devices to make money, to better themselves, to do what's convenient, what's good for them. That's what human beings do, unfortunately. There's supposed to be a separation, a buffer between the people who administrate and the people who make the money in the sport. There is no such thing. The promoters have influence over the organizations. The promoters have influence with the commissions. The promoters have influence with the television networks. You know, again, there's nothing separating these two entities. Look, I'll make the perfect example. For me, the clearest example of it is that if you went and you knew where to go the night before a big fight, Europe, it happens a lot. In the United States, you go into the right restaurant, you will see a big dinner going. And it's not the Last Supper, but it looks like it. I mean, the best of everything: wine, lobster, steaks, and you see all these people, like 20 people at a big long table, and who will be there will be the promoter of the next night's event, and will be all the officials that are supposed to be there administrating that fight, that is supposed to be officiating that fight. You will see the heads of the organizations, you'll see the judges, you'll see the referees, you'll see all these people at that table, a dinner, a very nice dinner, being hosted by the guy that has a fighter fighting the next night that wants that fighter to win, for him to make money, for him to go on in his career, for this to be worthwhile. He has a vested interest. That guy has to win. And he's got all the officials that are going to have something to do with who wins. He's got them and he's paying the bill. Let me ask you a simple question. If that was the New York Yankees, I use them because it's a world-known brand. If that was the New York Yankees baseball team, right, and it was the night before a World Series game, and the Steinbrenners were hosting such a dinner with all the heads of the umpiring crew, would that be allowed?
Absolutely not.
No. Should it be allowed in boxing?
Absolutely not. I agree with you 100% there. And let me turn your attention to what happens inside the ring, and let's hope that we get a just decision without corruption, without incompetence. If we were to look at a decision like that, or maybe even a knockout, give me your assessment of Bradley. Feels like he's gotten stronger, he's gotten better since the first fight. Obviously, Pacquiao thought he won the first fight and expects to be more aggressive now because he's being called out about not having the eye of the tiger or the hunger or the killer instinct. What do you think about both of those two situations? Is Bradley better and is Pacquiao lost that killer instinct?
I think both guys are different than they were the first time. Anybody who thinks that, hey, they're just going to show up, and if the judges get it right this time, then Pacquiao wins, they're wrong. Because both guys have gone through a metamorphosis. They've gone through a change, a drastic change. Dramatic things have happened in both their lives. You know, Pacquiao got knocked out cold in a very, very dramatic way, flat on his face. Sometimes fighters, human beings, these are human beings, they're not machines. Sometimes they never overcome something like that. Yeah, he went in with Rios, but Rios was put there. Take nothing away from Rios. Tough guy, decent puncher, but slow, easy to hit. You know, cement-footed, predictable. Perfect guy to bring Pacquiao back with. And Pacquiao danced circles around him, you know, box circles around him, if you will. But that doesn't mean that he's back, because that's not what he's going to be facing on Saturday night. It's going to be a different dimension, you know, a different element. So the most important thing is not what you and me think, it's what the fighter thinks. I don't know that Pacquiao knows he's okay. I don't know that you ever know if you're okay after a knockout loss like that. And then you add to the mix things like he owes money, he's got tax problems, he had personal problems, he's a politician over there. I mean, you got all these things swirling around on top of the fact that he got knocked out cold 2 fights ago. Wow. That's a lot to be carrying, and that's a lot to be asking for a guy to be mentally right going into this fight. Maybe the most important fight right now in his life, really. To go into this fight, to be mentally right with all that stuff going on. I don't know that you can feel that he's going to be okay right now. Obviously, you got to wait till Saturday night, but you have to have your doubts, and you have a good reason if you look at things intelligently and honestly for what they are. You have a good reason to worry about that. Now, with Bradley, he went through change too. He got to the cliff, but he didn't fall off the cliff. You know, for Vatnikov, you know, he almost got knocked out, but he didn't get knocked out. And then he came back against Marquez, not against Rios. Against Marquez, the same guy that knocked out Pacquiao, and he boxed real well and he won a fight and he looked good. To me, he's in a better place right now, mentally, psychologically, maybe physically and technically, emotionally. Right now, that you could be sure. I'm more sure of him right now than I am of Pacquiao.
Let me turn your attention now, if we put our finger on the scale and go up in weight, a guy that you've had your share of experience with. And we talked corruption earlier, but Don King is still in the game. A lot of people feel like, you know, he's the father of corruption in boxing, which may be an overstatement, but he's definitely played his part. There's an opportunity in just a month from now for Don King to be in control of one of the heavyweight titles again. My first question to you is that good for boxing? Is that good for the heavyweight division?
Listen, anytime you have titles now that are just being, moved around and just being plugged in, like you have it now, vacant titles, and and with guys that the public don't really recognize, where they really feel they've earned that position of looking at it as a true heavyweight title fight, then the sport has questions. It suffers a little bit, because one of the things that pulls the sport, the head that pulls the sport a little bit, is having a heavyweight champion that people believe should be the heavyweight champ, that people believe that he has that merit of being a heavyweight, the best big guy in the world. And that's been over in Europe. That's been over with the Klitschko's, and they haven't lost it in the ring. And now anytime you replace and put in substitutes, it's a substitute. It doesn't grab the belief, doesn't grab the merit in the minds of the fan, where they say, oh yeah, well, the heavyweight division is secure. Boxing's in a good place. When Tyson was there, everyone knew he was a champ. Ali, everyone knew he was a champ. Joe Frazier, everyone knew he was a George Foreman, everyone knew he was a champ. Lennox Lewis, everyone knew he was a champ. But now you're putting in guys that people don't know that. So does that bolster the sport? It doesn't bolster the sport. It doesn't bolster it, that's for sure. And these are two guys that I think it'll be an entertaining fight. I think, I think this time Arreola will probably do better than he did the first time, because he knows what he's facing, and hopefully he'll be in better shape too. But again, it's not the kind of fight for the heavyweight title that fans used to see or wanted to see.
So it sounds to me like whether it be Bermane Stiverne or Chris Arreola, neither one of them have a legitimate claim as heavyweight champion until they beat a Klitschko.
Look, if you want to be legitimate, if you want to be honest, I think we want to be legitimate. We try to be honest, and we should try to be honest. That would be a yes. I mean, until the guy that has the title loses it in the ring, yeah, you can't say you're the man until you take it from the man, But does that mean that this can't be an entertaining fight? No. And does that mean that it can help a certain side of boxing, a certain audience of boxing? I tell you one side it can help a little bit. The Hispanic fans are passionate fans. They're devoted fans to the sport of boxing. They go out all the time, and they love it in Mexico, Puerto Rico, or the Latino countries. And so from their perspective, if Arreola, a Latino fighter, wins the title, they're going to be happy. And to a certain extent, that's going to bode good, for boxing, because you will have that energy, that embracement of something by a very passionate core of people.
Now, I have to curl it back to Don King, because for all that he's been involved in boxing, good and bad, we can say that he's been the best promoter of heavyweights and heavyweight champions, in this modern era. So what I ask is, if he were able to get control of the heavyweight title again, and being that the titles have been over in Europe and no one in America really cares, the Klitschko's can't sell tickets here, they only sell them there, would Don King be, if you will, a necessary evil to bring that attention back to the American heavyweight and the American heavyweight championship?
No, he's not going to do it. It's going to be about consistency. It's going to be about giving a product. The American fans, boxing fans, people, they're not dumb. Back in the 80s, the sport was doing real well. Part of it was network television, but most of it was you were putting credible fights on. You were putting the best with the best, whether it was Leonard and Hearns or Duran or Hagler, or it was Matthew Saad Muhammad fighting all these tough light heavyweight. But the best guys were taking chances and they were fighting each other. You weren't just in cahoots with the different networks. Let's be honest, where it was a 80-20 fight or 70-30 fight, 70% one guy could win, 30% the other guy could win, where it was a setup fight because there were people that were in partnership together with the networks and with the promoters and with the managers, and instead of giving us the best fights, the most competitive fights, the most risky fights. That's what the sport needs. It needs that. One guy with King coming back and being back, yeah, it'll get a few sound bites. There'll be a couple blurbs out there on ESPN, Don King, remember him? but that's not gonna, bring the sport to a higher level. That's not gonna bring magic back. I mean, that's one fighter. Again, you need the consistency. You need the best guys fighting the best guys. And Don King can't be Don King anymore. Listen, what I mean by this, the same way as I don't know if Pacquiao can be Pacquiao anymore. I don't know, after what happened in his life. Don King's old. Don King doesn't have the things that he had before. He doesn't have Jose Sulaiman. God rest his soul. But he was a guy that allowed King to be king. He controlled one. Let's be honest here. I mean, people aren't honest in this sport enough. He was a guy that controlled one of the organizations, and King controlled him, and that's what allowed Don King to certain parts be Don King and do some of the things that he did. So he doesn't have that anymore. The landscape has changed. It's not the same anymore. Those things aren't in place. Don's older. Some of those people are gone. The environment is different. So he's not going to be able to go out there and bellow and control everything and just to monster everything the way he used to monster everything. It's a different time. It's a different day.
Teddy, one thing boxing definitely needs is Teddy Atlas. You bring the honesty, you bring the truth. I appreciate the candid interview and the sweatsuit because you make me look good. Radio Raheem with the legend, Teddy Atlas.